This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen, with Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
Even better than I was the last time, baby. Ooh, 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 ooh.
We back.
I'm good.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Here on 107.5 The Game, Tyler, West, and Chris along with you on this Thursday morning. Thank you once again to Jay Urich for hanging out with us in today's edition of the Garnet Trust Hour. Chris, Jay continued the trend. We asked him about his starting five for basketball, and he went pretty much all offensive guys. He had Devo in there, Shai Smith. I forget the other names he threw in, but it was pretty offensive heavy.
Was Jay part of the team?
I don't think
He did not put himself on there?
I don't believe he put himself on the team. He didn't have himself in the starting five, did he? I don't believe so.
I don't know.
I didn't think Jay was...
Did he give us a full five? I think he stopped at 3.
He gave you like 3 players. Here's my top 3.
No, yeah, he said he had to think about the rest.
Yeah, I guess.
I think it was kind of assumed that he was in there, though.
I think so. So I guess
Even though he didn't brag on his basketball abilities.
Well, he said he liked to play for fun. Didn't have maybe the best jump shot, but
he said Chad Terrell was
Chad was that guy?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the third guy, Chad Terrell. But then Debo and Shai Smith were the other two. So
tough to measure
a 4.
Yeah, that's going back a little bit. You know, it's like not a different era, but it's a few years. You can't really compare it to what guys would say right now. That's a whole nother argument.
He's 6'5", so the size will help him out.
It does.
I'm telling you, man, these guys they stick with their groups though, like offensive guys.
Quickie.
Yeah, offensive guys. But yeah, that was cool. That was awesome. If you missed it, go back. It'll be on podcast page on 107.5. It'll be on Gamecock Central YouTube. Always great to hear from Jay. And time flies, y'all. He said he was talking about 2015.
Mm-hmm. 8 years ago.
I've known Jay for almost 10 years now. That is insane. But super proud of him, man, and super proud of everything he's doing in the community. Always knew Jay was going to do awesome things, and awesome to see him, doing it. So if you can support original design, or if you can just if you can't support it financially, spread the word. They're doing great things over there, and awesome to hear from Jay. And Jay, like everybody in Columbia, very excited about some upcoming South Carolina football, which we're finally going to talk about today.
Yes.
Because we've been talking recruiting all week.
It's been a big week.
Yeah, it's been a somewhat big week, huh? And so we're going to dive into that today, I think, is the plan.
Yeah, 30 days away from kickoff. Obviously, camp gets started tomorrow. We'll have media day availability later on today, where you'll get to hear from pretty much everybody. Obviously, over the past couple weeks, we have SC Media Days, where we heard from, obviously, Shane, as well as Spencer, Tonka, and Kai Kroger. But today, it's open up to everybody. Is there any questions that have not been answered up to this point about this team or about these specific players that you're interested in maybe finding out today?
I think there are a lot of questions that have not been answered. But
Hold on.
What?
In terms of a quotation answer, or we don't know?
In terms of what they're going to tell us today, are we going to learn the answer to the question? It's probably the better way to put it.
I got us off track. Wes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I was going to say, we're talking semantics here.
Yeah.
Are there some questions that have not been answered? Yes. Are there some questions that have not been answered that will be answered in about 4 hours for Media Day? Probably not. Like, I want to be honest with everybody, but I also want everybody to read what we're writing and listen to us talk about it later too. So I'll put it like this: we will learn something.
Yes.
Today.
Well,
I don't know what it is yet. Yeah, we will learn something.
Some nugget.
Probably not from Beamer, because, again, we've heard him talk several times over these past couple weeks, but having the ability to talk to any of these players. And again,
somebody's going to slip up.
We've heard from Spencer, Tonka, Kai here recently, but the entire roster being opened up, you're going to get something from somebody.
Yeah, I actually have a list that I've formulated in my head.
You didn't write it down.
And it's in my head. Dangerous place to be. And I'll tell y'all some of them. And Wes will probably be like, Chris, they answered that at the golf tournament last week. And I'll be like, yeah, you're right. But I do have a few very small things. I don't anticipate some big picture item. There have been media opportunities in the past where you walk in and it's just like today, just like we think today is going to be. And you walk in there, kind of ho-hum, here we go. We'll get some little nuggets, and then boom, something gets dropped on you. That has happened.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate that, but that's why, if that happens, when it's happened in the past, it's been a big surprise. But I do have a few small things, that I think we could learn throughout the day.
What did y'all think of? So for those who don't know, I'll give everybody behind the scenes. Tyler is always like, hey guys, what are we going to talk about today? And then me and Chris are always like, we're going to riff off of this. But what did y'all think? I sent y'all an actual game plan.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, good job, Wes.
What did y'all think of those questions?
That was good.
That's Tyler's way of saying,
yeah,
6 out of 10. But so here's how I maybe blocked this off in my head. One thing we are looking forward to seeing on Friday. So that could be also one thing you're looking forward to learning. One player you're looking forward. One anything. Answer it however you wish. One question you have for Friday that may or may not be answered. And then one thing you want or hope to learn from Media Day today. And I think you could argue those are all three the same, or you could split them up and say there's three distinct things or distinct ways you could answer those questions.
Okay. Do you want to go this one question at a time?
Yeah. I think we go one at a time.
Okay.
And just see where it takes us. We never know where it's going to take us.
That's the fun of it.
So we'll start off with the one thing looking forward to seeing on Friday.
We could get into another semantic, right? What does seeing mean?
Well, what
visualize?
What do you guys actually get to see is probably the better question.
Well, see a lot of stretching. See a lot of yelling.
Yelling.
Not yelling at players, just yelling like hype at the beginning. No Byron Gerardo anymore to use the mic.
Demo, though.
Yeah, Demo will be there. No, I miss my guy, the DJ, that used to be out there. He's no longer in Columbia. But so what you see, I believe we got 7 periods that are open. Generally, you're going to see a lot of special teams. You're going to see a lot of what you would call individual work. So it's more like, hey, here's some defensive linemen hitting, a sled. Here's offensive linemen doing drill. Here's maybe they're doing a drill about ball security. Like I said, special teams, that could be truly lining up and actually working through some special teams, or they're very obviously detail-oriented when it comes to special teams. So that can be like a punt block drill where you're just focused on taking the football off the punter's foot, something very specific like that. The thing we will most potentially get out of it, sometimes they do, and I don't know what you call this drill technically. They'll do like a like a flow to the ball drill is probably the most logical way to describe it, where the defense will go get lined up, and they'll have to get lined up quickly and be where they're supposed to be, and they'll snap a imaginary ball, and they have to run to the football. That gives you at least an idea of what the depth chart is for that particular moment in time.
Yep.
Every now and then, Chris, you will sometimes get an actual true. They'll do like 2 or 3 play. Like, it's kind of like a way to get everybody dialed in and fired up. They'll say, let's do one possession of 1s versus 1s, then 2s versus 2s. That means you've hit the jackpot if you're out there as, somebody trying to deliver some news. But that also is a way to just, like I said, get the players dialed in. Hey, these aren't just drills. There's a reason we're doing this. This is football. There won't be pads, so that limits things.
When do pads start?
The rules change. Is it 3 day, third day?
I think it's on the 5th day.
5th now. Good grief.
So
you always have acclimation periods to get everybody in.
Work your way up to it.
Yeah. And so you've got that aspect. No pads. You'll get some one-on-ones sometimes, but usually you more during that time period get routes against air. And it's not even plays against air. It's more quarterback, receiver / tight end running one route.
Yeah.
Throw a pass. But so that's at least in general what you could expect to see if you were out there tomorrow.
So my big picture answer to your question of one thing that we want to see on day one of practice would be the depth chart if we get to see it. I will drill down on that a little bit more, go a little bit more micro, because I think we have a really good idea at most of the spots. Not all. There's still a few that I'm interested in. I'm most interested out of all those, though, if we get to see it, the offensive line configuration. That's the one I would want to see. Who's out there at left tackle first? Is it Ja'Kai Moore? I mean, probably, if we get to see it, but I don't know for sure. Who's at right tackle? Is it still Gargiulo at left guard, Rashawn Lee at center? What does right guard look like? Is Marquis Anderson with the ones? I mean, that would be mine as far as like what I'm most interested to visualize, to see out there. I think it's an important question. It'll change. It could change. Mm-hmm. I mean, whatever configuration they put out there, that's the configuration for that day or maybe even that moment. I mean, you're probably going to not see because we won't get to actually see it a lot of the time, but we may hear of, using multiple different configurations as practice one with no pads. By the time they're about to kick it off against North Carolina, we could see a couple different changes. But I am curious now with where things stand with Jalen Nichols out, with Kaysen Henry probably back. Will he be full go on day one? I'm not sure. I mean, Beamer said birdies with Beamer last week. Kaysen Henry's 85%. Is that good enough for him to be out there day one doing everything? I don't know. Maybe. So he will be back in the fold. So I'm just curious, what does that first configuration on day one look like if we get to get a look at it?
Yeah, I like that one. That would definitely, if I wasn't trying to give different answers than you, that would definitely be one of my answers on one of the 3 things. I will say, I'll take it in a little different direction. I want to see which of the guys who missed the spring are instantly, are they far enough along that even if they're limited on certain drills, that they're still running around out there with their position group? Mm-hmm. Or are they off to the side still doing what is kind of like a in-practice rehab session? There's different things different guys will be doing depending on severity of injury, depending on what the injury was, and depending on how far along they are. But there's a difference, in my opinion, between, all right, this guy is practicing, they're just not able to do everything, versus they're not really practicing at all. So for me, that would be Kaysen Henry, like you talked about at right tackle. Is he already back out there? We know Mo Kaba, Jordan Strong, from what Beamer has said, will be somewhat limited to start practice. But again, to what extreme is that? Does that mean they're both out there, with the group that they play with? David Spalding, another guy. Is that at nickel or safety? I kind of anticipate that'll be nickel, but we'll see. Tonka Hemingway, another guy. I think he sort of indicated, it seemed like at SEC Media Days, that he's good to go. But I think those are all things that fans will be curious to see, and that I will be curious to see as well.
You guys mentioned possibly getting a peek at special teams. I'm curious to know what, if any, role Harbor could play on special teams. I mean, we've obviously talked about him a lot being a wide receiver, and he's going to be utilized to some degree there, but the emphasis that Beamer and Limbo put on special teams, you have a 5-star guy that has the ability to play multiple different types of positions. What does that look like on special teams? Is he playing gunner? Is he maybe returning punts? There's a lot of possibilities there. Yeah,
and that is one thing you will get to see. That's usually a pretty easy slam dunk as far as having a note for people is even if they're not doing full-on kickoff drills where people are running down there, you will be having guys receive kickoffs and receive punts usually during the session we are out there. And generally, you're going to see there may be 3, 4, 5, maybe more guys catching those kickoffs and punts, especially this time of the year when you're just getting into camp. And, I'd imagine Leggette's going to be the first guy to get a shot at kickoff returner. You'd imagine Eddie Lewis / maybe Amarian Brown gets first shot at punt return. But, certainly, there's other guys. And I'm glad you went there, Tyler. Will Harbor, because I think of him more as a kickoff returner than a punt returner.
Mm-hmm.
Punt returner, to me, smaller guy, quick twitch, make the first guy miss. It's much harder to catch a punt than it is to catch a kickoff. But I think you look at a kickoff returner, that's where these days you see a little bit bigger guy. You got to let that guy build up his speed because you have some distance to cover there before the defense gets to you, the kickoff team gets to you. So I think that'll be very fascinating.
We'll answer the next question of what we have question-wise for Friday coming up next. You're listening to Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Kickoff is nearly here. That means if you are in the business Chris and I are in, we're going to be busy. And I know y'all are busy too, which means you need a great but efficient way to get your lunch. Firehouse Subs and FirehouseSubs.com and the Firehouse Subs app is by far the easiest way to order a great meal. Have it waiting for you right there on the shelf. Chris, we've been telling everybody about this pepperoni meatball sub now for the last couple of weeks, but we're going to keep telling them. I was in Firehouse Subs earlier this week. By the way, I think I read this correctly. You can actually get the garlic bread for your other subs now, too. They have it on display up there. So if you liked what was going on with the pepperoni meatball sub, then you want to sort of implement that garlic bread aspect to other subs. Seems like a great idea if you want to mix it up. Not that you would need to, because this thing has crispy pepperoni, has amazing meatballs, and the kicker, extra cheese, extra provolone cheese. It is by far one of the best specials they have had, and all their specials have been good. Chris, Firehouse Subs app, FirehouseSubs.com. We got to get lunch somewhere quick today and tomorrow. Let's make it Firehouse Subs.
Let's make it Firehouse Subs. I'm now thinking about the garlic bread with the New York steamer. How about that combo? Let's keep the focus, though. Pepperoni pizza meatball sub. If you haven't had it yet, you might be running out of time, Wes. I don't know when they're ending it, but don't be that guy or girl that shows up.
Don't risk it.
Don't risk it at all. FirehouseSubs.com, the Firehouse Subs app. The app's the best way, Wes, in my opinion. Rapid Rescue is awesome online, but you can earn points through the Firehouse Subs app. 14 different locations throughout the Midlands.
All right, we will answer the questions that we have for Friday coming up next. Listen to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Here on 107.5 The Game, Tyler, West, and Chris, along with you. Want to remind you once again about the Ultimate Gamecocks season ticket giveaway that's live right now on 1075thegame.com. Just look for the Ultimate Season Ticket image and give it a click. Fill out that form for your chance to win tickets to every home football game, every home men and women's basketball games, and every home baseball game when the spring rolls around. It's the Ultimate Gamecocks season ticket giveaway, the biggest we've ever done here on 107.5 The Game. Continue our conversation as we preview Media Day and camp. We move on to the question that we have for Friday, the one question that we have for Friday that we're hoping to get answered about 24 hours from now.
My question is, does South Carolina, on the defensive side, roll out a configuration similar to what we saw actually for most of the spring? Or do they roll out a configuration like what we've seen for the better part of the 2 years that Clayton White has been, the 2 seasons that Clayton White has been South Carolina's defense coordinator? What do I mean by that? Is this going back to what we've seen where it's really two what you would call defensive tackles, and then outside of them 2 edge guys, 2 defensive ends? Or is it more like what we saw in the spring where you kind of played a guy who, by the way your roster is configured, is listed as a defensive lineman, is a defensive tackle, but is playing one of those edge spots? And so, I think they've said many times they want for Tonka to be an inside guy. I think they want Elijah Davis to be, even TJ Sanders. He's an inside guy, but he played as a defensive end quite a bit during the spring. Was that a spring thing? Was that something we could see? So ultimately, I think there's a pretty good chance that JT Gear and Jordan Strong are maybe your 2 outside starters. But they have, Chris, they've got enough depth in that quote-unquote defensive tackle group. You may be sitting there saying, man, we got to get all these guys on the field, because Boogie's going to make his case. We know what Tonka is. TJ Sanders was defensive player of the spring for a reason. Throw in Nick Barrett. Throw in Elijah Davis. There's a case for finding a way to get those guys on the field. So that's my question that we may or may not have answered. But, how do they align in this practice?
And during the spring, you were still at the point in the year where, I think you're playing some guys out there for depth purposes during the spring because of what you had going on. Strong was still out. Your depth in the spring, Gear was not on campus. So you kind of a dual thing there. You're playing guys there out of necessity for depth, but also kind of seeing, as you experiment with some different packages and personnel groups, okay, could this work? Now that you're getting into actual preseason camp, you've had the spring, you've had the summer, you are having to dial down a little bit on what you're actually going to be and what you're going to do. So I think it's more telling, Wes, if we do see some of that. Tonka playing outside would not be some big surprise, nor would really any of the other guys, but how is that configured? Now, what question are we on? Are we on the thing you want? We're on the biggest question, right? Not the thing that you want to see.
We are on the one question we have for Friday.
Yeah. So here's my question, and really, I could flip flop the thing I said last segment and this one. My biggest question is, what role is Nicholas Harbor playing from what we can observe in practice 1, if you can observe that at all? So Nicholas Harbor could have been, you're talking about him last segment, Tyler. He could be the one thing that I want to see, because I do, and the offensive line could be my biggest question. But I'll say just my question is, how are you going to utilize Nicholas Harbor? Let's say we get to see a depth chart drill. I don't know if we will, but let's say if we get to see first, second, third team of offense, and we're seeing basically an entire period of them out there lining up, doing some 11-on-11 work. Where's Harbor lined up? Probably outside. Yeah, probably. What type of routes do they have him focusing on early in his development? Is he on special teams, as you said, Tyler? Mm-hmm. Is he out there as a gunner? Do they have him on the block team? Do we get to see any of that? That, for me, is a huge question I would like to get answered. And you can loop it into kind of what am I looking forward to seeing. We're going to see this big 6'5" kid who can really, really run. Hopefully we get to see him cut it loose in some form or fashion during practice. But that is my question. We know we've tempered expectations. We're not going to expect him out there with the first team. We're not going to expect 3 touchdowns against North Carolina or in practice number 1. But just how is he used? To me, that's a fascinating question.
I'm going to be curious to know how some of these guys that have been injured are, how active they are in day one. Casey Henry, Mokaba, Jordan Strawn, guys like that who are going to play important roles on this team this year. You talk about Casey Henry factoring in for the decision at that tackle spot. How much are they doing on day number 1? And, what's the potential for them when we do get to game number 1 right at a month from now?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, that kind of fit in with mine as well for the other question. But I think it's a key. And, you certainly, if this defense is going to be what Gamecock fans want it to be, I think that almost has to include an ultimately healthy Jordan Strawn and ultimately healthy Mokaba. And we've seen it. You can be healthy. You can be 100% healthy, but not quite what you were before when you're coming off a major knee injury. And sometimes it takes an entire other year for that to happen. Some guys it doesn't. Some guys go right back out there, and these two have dealt with major knee injuries before, so they've been through it. But I think that's going to be a key. Are they, even if they're out there today, is this one of those things where you're on a pitch count, so to speak, and they're just kind of managing their workload? I think that'll be fascinating to see.
I got an answer for us, guys, just to tie this one off.
You've answered all these questions?
Acclimatization period. Man, that is a hard word to say. So it's a 7-day period, but what that means is first 2 days, you can only do helmets and shoulder pads. So you'll be out there wearing shorts, jerseys, helmets and shoulder pads. Next 3 days, helmets, shoulder pads, or spider pads. And then on day 6, you can go to full pads. So it's basically like we said, 5 days. Then you can get in full pads on day 6. So that's kind of what to expect. Unfortunately, the people still cannot come out. Maybe one day.
Say that word again.
Why? Acclimatization. There we go.
I feel like I'll leave out the
acclimation. Well, that's a word too.
But between that and curvilinear, we're written some big words this week.
Like when you say I want to get acclimated to something,
yeah,
but then you change it to acclimatization.
Acclimatization. Learn
like
something new.
Identity.
We're gonna have a spelling test for the listeners at the end of the week.
We're not having one for the host, I'll tell you that, because I will be failing at that.
All right, we'll talk more about what we're hoping to hear from Media Day today. Coming up next, you're listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
All right, you've heard us talk about our good friend, Amy Mason Cup, Amy Mason Cup State Farm. If you need an insurance agent who can help you switch and save, answer your questions, make sure that you have the best coverage for the best price, I recommend calling my friend Amy Mason Cup. She did the exact same for my family and I. We wanted to look over all of our policies. We wanted to bundle them. We wanted to make sure that we did a deep dive on what exactly our coverage was. Are we covered in this situation or that situation? And then are we getting a great price for name brand insurance? We called Amy Mason Cup State Farm. She helped us with it. She can help you do the same. AmyMasonCup.com. That's AmyMasonCupp.com. If you want to go pay her a visit, her office is actually pretty close to downtown, right off the St. Andrews Road exit on I-26, 612 St. Andrews Road, Suite 4 in Columbia. Again, just off the St. Andrews Road exit, I-26. That's Ashland Park Plaza. You can also give her a call, 803-772-5554. She has a great team over there. Whatever your needs are from an insurance standpoint, she and State Farm have you covered. They can give you a personalized quote on all types of policies to meet your needs and help you save. Amy Mason Cup is also a South Carolina native and, of course, a local agent here in Columbia. Again, give her a call, 803-772-5554. Visit her, 612 St. Andrews Road, Suite 4, Ashland Park Plaza, or check out our website, AmyMasonCup.com. Let her help you switch and save. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
What are we hoping to hear at Media Days? Talk about that next. coming up on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, 107.5.
You loved Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now get to know her on Give Them Lala.
Is it weird having a million things to talk about and the only thing he wanted to talk about is Bravo?
Yes, and it's always weird. It's like when I went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner and thought that this was my chance to make a change, and they were like, well, enough about change. Stand up. And then I have so many questions for Howie that had nothing to do, and he was like, so scandal.
Give Them Lala, wherever you listen.
Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. 107.5 The Game. I want to remind you once again about the 107.5 The Game football kickoff golf tournament coming up Friday, August 25th out at Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia. If you want to take part in it, it is $100 per person and $400 per team. Going to have lunch provided by Firehouse Subs, raffling off football tickets, Carowin passes, and much, much more. If you want to take part, give Charwood a call at 803-755-2000. But don't waste too much time. Those spots are going to fill up very, very quickly. All right, as we turn our attention to the third question that Wes has posed for us today in relation to camp and media days. The one thing that we want to learn from media day today, and as we talked about, we've heard from Shane plenty over the past couple weeks, probably not going to get anything new out of him. We've heard from the coordinators and other assistants last week out at Birdies with Beamer, but the players themselves, that's where I feel like we may get some good stuff today.
So I like to kind of nerd out on this stuff. My questions I want to answer today at Media Day will be, and it's a new offense, right? It's a new offensive scheme. So who is playing where within the wide receiver spots? Like we know, so right now, I think it's a fairly safe bet. If healthy, you have Juice, AB, and Xavier Leggett as your three guys. And you have Juice at an outside spot, X at an outside spot, and AB in the slot. And but so all three of those are different receiver spots. So who's playing which ones? Because that, if you're trying to formulate, you're trying to work backwards and put together a depth chart, that's how you do it. And then on the other side, who's working at each individual defensive back spot? Because we've already reported on Gamecock Central which linebackers are working at each spot. And so we're able to gather that information. But I want to know who's truly in the mix at nickel. Is DQ Smith in the conversation there still, or is it, hey, DQ, you're a safety? Is there any talk to sliding a guy like Jalen? If Jalen Kilgore is as good as we think he is there any chance he just slides down to nickel as opposed to being a backup at safety? Is David Spalding starting out this year at nickel? All those things will be of interest to me. And then in that same line, what does a guy like Torian Gray say about the freshman in terms of his expectations for them? I fully am preparing for Vakari Swain to steadily move up this depth chart at corner, but it'll be curious, and this kind of goes back to something I want to see in practice. Has he already made that move? Is he already potentially working with the twos, or is this going to be one of those things where, hey, you're a freshman, you got to kind of move your way up as this thing progresses?
That's actually exactly where I would go. I tried to think of, you always try to come up with something different if you can. But I think learning from the players, sometimes the coaches won't say it, Tyler, to your point, that where you get some smaller nuggets from the players, whether it's like, this guy has looked really good, watch out for him. Sometimes you get that from the players even before the coaches, or this guy looks like one of the faster guys on the team, or this guy's made a lot of plays back there. I think whether it's coaches, whether it's players, there are a few positions that we may be able to learn more about this year. Now, I know, Tyler, you were talking about, for instance, special teams. I mean, we know who the snapper is. We know it's going to be Hunter Rogers. We know Kai Kroger's punting. We know Mitch Jeter is kicking. On the return front, though, is it what we think it probably will be? Will Pete Lembo come out and say this guy probably has the edge? Will some of the players say this guy has looked really good doing that? So I think, kick returner, you would figure Xavier Legette has the leg up. But is that still the case? I mean, probably, but I would like to learn that. Eddie Lewis, is he the guy at punt return, or is he just maybe the guy? That's an intriguing one. I think you look at what South Carolina has done on the punt return front past couple years. You had Josh Vann, who there weren't a bunch of huge plays. You can think about a couple nice returns he had. AB had one in the bowl game when Josh Vann was out. But I think that was kind of a luxury because Josh Vann was so reliable. Even if you're not springing a bunch of big punts, I know Pete Lembo would love to do that. But Eddie Lewis has a lot of experience there, but that is still a position that, you got to get solved. Another thing from Lembo, or just from the players, wherever it comes from, aside from losing Josh Vann on special teams, there were some other guys that were really, really good on special teams that did some other things for you. Darius Rush was a huge one. He was one of the best special teams players in addition to being a top corner for this team. A lot of Gamecock fans love, rightfully so, to talk about how good the special teams have been. And a lot of that is Pete Lembo, Shane Beamer. It's the actual kickers, holders, snappers. But you got to think about also not just the return guys and those elements, but the gunners, who's playing on the line. So, Trey Kenyon he played a ton of snaps last year on special teams and was a really, really good player. So who are some of the guys that can step into those voids? Is it Josh Simon and Trey Knox, for instance? You don't have Nate Adkins. He was a really big part of your special team. So that's kind of maybe a smaller thing that I think is going to play a critical role in this team. We know special teams is going to be important, but who are some of the guys that are poised to take a step up and replace some of these other non-returner, non-actual kicker players on special teams?
I was going to say something as well about the defensive backs, but Wes mentioned it there. I'd be interested to know from the individual running backs themselves how they feel like they're going to be used in this new offense. And, we've talked about that position this entire offseason, the questions about it. When you couple that with the questions about the offensive line, still trying to figure out what's going on there, I think we can all agree you're not going to be able to run the ball up the middle maybe as much as you would like to. So you're going to have to get creative with it, use some guys out of the backfield, some screens, dump offs, those kind of things. Just from any of their perspectives, how they think they're going to be used in Dow Loggins' new offense.
Yeah, and I think along those same lines, who's the first guy out there with the first bunch? Is it 5? Is it to carry on? I tend to think.
You would imagine so.
I tend to think it is. That was probably not so obvious, 5 months ago or whatever it was. But now it just feels like it has been trending that way. And, Dow Loggins, I thought he had a great quote. He basically went as far as saying, paraphrasing here, I'd hate to see where we'd be without him. And so that, I think, speaks volumes. 229 pounds now, right?
Yeah.
We're going to say that as many times as we can. Chris, I was in here his first Garnet Trust interview. You were in here for his second one. He physically does look like a running back now.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be first guy out there. I don't think, Tyler, they're going to tell us much about their role, but I think it'll be interesting to see if we can get a couple little tidbits here and there about what that might look like. And it's going to be fun to see it play out once you start to kind of I get just as pumped from a roster building standpoint and tracking all that stuff. I get just as interested with watching, for example, South Carolina play Furman.
Yep.
When you get to see maybe there's a little bit more of a rotation. Maybe, obviously if you get a lead, you can put a bunch of guys in the second half. I think all those things are very fun to just add to the data you're pulling for.
Absolutely. We'll come back, wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. I want to get Wes and Chris's take on what one Gamecock fan sent to a school up north the other day. I'll let you know about that next. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5, The Game.
Guys, football season is almost upon us, and everybody is looking for something to add to the man cave. Or again, maybe if you have a special someone in your life that is just really hard to buy a gift for, I've got an idea for you. If you want to have that special person's, maybe their favorite jersey, maybe they've got an autograph, maybe there's a collectible that they want to hang on the wall in the man cave, hit up our friends at Gold Line Framing in West Columbia. Owner Kendall Walsh and manager Johnny James, they're going to take care of any and all your custom framing needs. Again, that could be a diploma, that could be some original artwork, but that also could be a flag, a canvas, or a jersey. They've been in business for over 20 years. They're at 511 12th Street, West Columbia. On location, they also have an art gallery, home decor, furniture, and gift items all in store. If you got questions, just give them a call, 803-739-1337. Again, 803-739-1337. They're open Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and on Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Also, you can follow them on Instagram at Goldline Framing SC. Again, that's my friend Kendall Walsh and manager Johnny James at Goldline Framing in West Columbia.
Wrap up today's edition of the show. Coming up next, 107.5 The Game.
Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen. With Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game. Tyler, Wes, and Chris, a couple more minutes ago before handing things over to Jay for the halftime show. You guys follow message board geniuses on Twitter by chance?
Yes.
You do? Did you see what popped up last night in relation to South Carolina?
Oh, I see a lot of things that pop up on there.
So
always some good takes.
A South Carolina fan posted this. I scheduled a DoorDash delivery for Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. via Krispy Kreme to gives an address, which I'm assuming is the University of Maryland football facility, and a box of glazed donuts for Jashawn Barham, as well as head coach Mike Loxley, for angering Shane Beamer a couple of years ago, which has in turn fueled him to turn the DMV into the pipeline that it's become.
Shane Beamer has snapped. Since they, and for people probably remember this, but, you know, there was a video that Maryland football put out on their official channel. Jashawn Barham, he had committed to South Carolina, pretty quickly afterwards flipped back to Maryland, and Maryland put out a little video where I guess it was Jashawn's mom had said, "Go Terps," and, you know, she's like on a Zoom call or something with Mike Loxley, the head coach there, and she says, "We like that better than Gamecocks," and they put that out, you know, trying to a little troll of South Carolina.
Sure.
Trying to get cute.
They had to delete. They came after and deleted it because they got ratioed.
Did they delete it? Wow.
Oh, it was deleted. But you put something on the internet.
You got to own it, man.
Yeah, you just got to roll with it. You can't put it out and delete it. That's even
you got to
worse.
own it. Got to own it.
And so since then, Desmond Umeozulu, Gamecock, Nick Harbor, Gamecock, Dylan Stewart, Gamecock. But Maryland only got the courtesy inclusion, too, for Dylan Stewart.
Yeah, they weren't even in the real top
They weren't even close. So, you know, they were in there for Nicholas Harbor a little bit. They threw everything. Had Kevin Plank out at the basketball games talking to him. Tree Bob Alade, right? Remember? Maryland.
Yep.
You know, caused a decommitment there, but he's back with the Gamecocks and now on campus. So, yeah, ever since that video, things have gone pretty well in the DMV for South Carolina. You know, Maryland's got some guys from Maryland, but a lot of the big fish heading down south to play for Shane Beamer.
Well, whoever this person is, they've been waiting for this opportunity. This was definitely something they've had planned out for a while, so I tip my cap to the pettiness.
Yeah, that's a level of petty we can only all dream to hit. So
that'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Coming up next, it's Jay with Halftime Show on 107.5 The Game.